The rice terraces of Ifugao, which filter into the Chico River, are a marvel of indigenous engineering. Though there is some dispute as to when people began to sculpt the hillside according to the harvesting of rice and a complex agricultural calendar, they have functioned for at least the last millennium, while some historians date their existence back more than 2 millennia. The terraces are a hydraulic engineering system. They move water around according to agricultural cycles for food production. They are one of the few monuments in the Philippines that show no evidence of having been influenced by colonial cultures that arrived in the islands in the 16th century. Because they are so remote in northern Luzon, the tribes here are among the few peoples who successfully resisted any domination from colonization and preserved much of their indigenous culture. According to their UNESCO inscription, the Ifugao rice terraces epitomize the absolute blending of the physical, socio-cultural, economic, religious, and political environment. Indeed,
just pausing so you can read the quote slowly for yourself. So this is part of the UNESCO listing for the terraces. So if you went to the UNESCO website, you would probably find this text.
is a living cultural landscape of unparalleled beauty. It is possible that the terraces began with producing taro, a crop that was common with other cultures of Oceania in the early parts of the first millennium of the Common Era, before they shifted to rice production. Many of the knowledge practices supported in the rice terraces involved rituals and maintenance that were transferred from one generation to the next using oral traditions. We get a sense of how complex the agricultural cycle is at these rice terraces by looking at this agricultural calendar chart produced by the anthropologist Harold Conklin.
Just pause in case anyone wants to look in. So this is a chart based on the oral traditions of the people, explaining when they harvest, when they plant, when they store, when they do different maintenance activities to the rice terraces. So if you're interested in this topic, you would want to find the original, written by Harold Conklin in the 1960s.
In the 60s. As you can see, the broad middle ring of 4 tightly linked bands indicates the seasonal divisions on the sequences of events that comprise one local annual cycle. The inner ring, that spokes like a bicycle, is the locally named lunar months, whereas the outer ring gives the 12 divisions of the Gregorian calendar. Interestingly, you can see that the agricultural cycle is divided into 2 main parts. Just one for the field preparation, taking up 2/3 of this space, and then grain production, taking up just 1/3 of the year. That means most of the year is spent preparing for the terraces. Of course, these agricultural cycles overlap from one terrace to the next. In Ifugao, there are over 150 discrete agricultural districts in its 96 square kilometers, so that in theory, there are always terraces overlapping in the production of rice, no matter what time of year. In terms of living arrangements, there are several dozen hamlets in an average district near a clustered series of irrigated terraces. Each district is defined by a single, centrally located ritual rice field, traditionally the first parcel to be planted and harvested. In this image, we can see how some of the traditional thatched roof Ifugao granaries remain, while corrugated iron roofs clad some of the newer dwellings. The owner of the central field makes all district-wide agricultural decisions. He or she manages all ritual field property, including a granary housing carved wooden idols called bulul. and the basket reliquary, Panu Bungan, in which portions of consecrated sacrifices from all agricultural first rites are kept. Here we can see how the terrace itself is composed.
Just pausing so you can see the terraces. Not the translation even. So you can see all the different layers of gravel and different types of earth.
The retaining wall sits against a rough gravel fill, which in turn is the main support for the whole of the terrace. These are literally steps being built onto the hillside itself. On top of that gravel fill is a hard earth fill, and yet on top of that is a worked pond field soil for growing rice in, specifically. And then the very final layer on the top, marked by the letter A in this diagram, is the water itself, which can be controlled with the inlets above and below. The rice terraces are a memorial to the history and labour of more than 1,000 generations of small-scale farmers who, working together as a community, have created a landscape based on a delicate and sustainable use of natural resources.
Okay, so I'm skipping part 3, we'll do that next week, and we'll move on to 4.1 and 4.2.